Hello everybody and welcome back to This Week in Yu-Gi-Oh! The Yu-Gi-Oh! News podcast where we talk about all the news that's happened in this week of Yu-Gi-Oh! This week I am not joined by Salad because he has decided to go across the country and be in Cornwall for a while with absolutely no Wi-Fi. So this week I am joined by Devon. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Hello, I'm Devon. You wouldn't have seen me on the channel before. I mainly play obscure 60 card decks, which is why I'm never doing deck profiles. Massive fan of glass cannon decks, and yeah, that's me.
Awesome. And yeah, in today's episode, Devon's going to take the role of Salad. I asked him before we started recording how many of the new cards this week he's read, and he answered 0. So here we are, basically with the exact same format we will usually use. So to begin this episode, we are going to talk about the new Centaurian cards. I did do a video on these a couple of days ago, if you want a more in-depth look on the archetype and what the deck can do. But for the podcast, we're just going to talk about the new cards that have been released. So we're going to start with Centaurian Primera. This is a level 4 light spellcaster tutor effect monster. You'll notice that it's a light spellcaster with 1600 attack and 1600 defense. This means it obviously qualifies for the Ecclesia stuff that has been released, such as the Despian Synchro monster. But the text of this card is, if this card is normal or special summoned, you can add one Centaurian card from your deck to your hand, except for another copy of itself, but you cannot special summon herself for the rest of this turn. Your level 5 or higher Centaurian monsters cannot be destroyed by card effects while this card is treated as a continuous trap, and during the main phase, while this card is treated as a continuous trap, you can special summon it. So what do you think of that, Dev?
Yeah, it seems really good actually. Searching specifically Centurion card as opposed to spell, trap or monster, very good in the deck. Giving it the protection effect as well, seems to be very, very nice. And yeah, presumably this is sort of like similar to Crystal Beast, this archetype. They sort of obviously have a way to put themselves in their spell trap zone. Yeah, this one's staple, probably going to be free of, right?
Yeah, I reckon so. This during the main phase, if it's treated as a continuous trap, you can special summon it, is on all of the monsters, and it's kind of the gimmick of the deck, which is really, really interesting, especially being a continuous trap. This obviously makes it generically spell speed 2, so you can do it on both your turn and your opponent's turn, sort of like Vision Hero increase, and it's going to lead to some interesting combos. We'll go on to the second card. This is Centaurian Trudea. This is a level 4 Dark Pyro effect monster with 1000 attack and 2000 defense. You can only use the first and second effect of this card's name each once per turn. During the main phase, you can place this card you control and one Centaurian monster from your hand or deck, except for another copy of herself, face up in the spell and trap zone as continuous traps, but you cannot special summon Trudea again for the rest of this turn. The second effect is during the main phase, while this card is treated as a continuous trap, you can special summon it, then you can increase its level by 4. So, thoughts on this, Dev?
So this just seems to be sort of like an archetype E-Telly. It sticks to the gimmick as well, which is really funny, and it has level modulation, which I'm a massive fan of. It's going to give you access to some really cool synchro plays, I'm sure, which seems to be so far what we're going with the deck anyway.
Yeah, I think that's quite accurate. What I really like about Trudea is the way that it's an E-Telly, like you said, but it just plays around Ash because it puts it in the spell and trap zone, knowing that the monster is just going to be able to special summon itself anyway.
Yeah, very good. It sticks to the gimmick as well, which is always fun when new decks come out, especially if they're sort of viable.
Sorry, can you say that again?
Yeah, I said it's really interesting that it just sticks to the gimmick as well.
Oh, yeah, no, definitely. 100%. Like, this special summon for the spell trap zone seems like it's going to be really, really strong on these cards. We'll go into the third card here, and this is Centaurian Emmet 6, or VI. It's a level 8 Earth Machine effect monster with 2000 attack and 3000 defense. The first effect is during your opponent's turn. If this card is in your hand or graveyard, quick effect, you can target one Centaurian monster you control, except for another copy of itself, place it in the spell and trap zone as a continuous trap, and if you do, special summon this card. And the second effect is the standard effect of, during the main phase, if this card is treated as a continuous trap, you can special summon it. So, thoughts on this one?
Yeah, very good. Quick effect summon on your opponent's turn. Always nice. Helps you dodge hand traps and stuff like that where relevant. It's quite big. And yeah, having the if it's treated as a continuous trap, special summon it again. Very cool that all of the main monsters so far stick to the same gimmick. Few restrictions on them, which is nice as well.
Yeah, it's just so big as well. Just 2,000 attack, 3,000 defense is, for something you're going to be special summoning for free in multiple different ways, sounds really cool. And the fact that it's a level 8 means it pairs up really well with the level 4 tuner for the archetypal synchro, which we'll talk about in a second. But also because Trudea can increase its level by 4, it also means you have access to rank 8 plays with stuff like Sargas and Dingirsu, which I think is quite cool, and it could be an option for the deck to go down. The synchro monster that I just mentioned is a level 12 light machine synchro effect monster with 3,500 attack and 2,000 defense. Requires a tuner and a non-tuner monster. You can only use the first and third effect of this card's name once per turn. If this card is special summoned, you can draw one card, then you can destroy the face-up monster your opponent controls with the highest attack, your choice if tied. The second effect is your monsters with 2,000 or less attack cannot be destroyed by battle, and the third effect is during each end phase you can place one non-synchro Centaurian monster from your hand or graveyard face up in your spell and trap zone as a continuous trap. What are your thoughts here?
Yeah, so this actually looks really, really good. Drawing a card on summon and popping a monster, very good, very basic interactions, but keeping advantage in decks like this, very good. It has the protection effect for all of the small monsters so far, cannot be destroyed by battle. It's a very, very good one. Like a lot of people generally miss ones like this. It's ones just get looked over, and it can make your main monsters stick for longer. And having during each end phase, to both players' turns, place one non-synchro Centurion from your hand or graveyard. It's keeping your resources in the game as well. Very nice. Like you're going +1 on summon, and then recycling resources every single end phase, whilst having a protection effect in what is very easy to access in the deck as well.
Yeah, I 100% agree. This card is quite insane. The fact that the pop is optional as well, allowing you to get that draw on your first turn, is not to be overlooked, I don't think. We'll go into the spells and traps now. We'll start with the field spell, which I think is probably the most important card in the deck. Has 3 effects. The second and third can only be used once per turn. The first effect is it cannot be destroyed by your opponent's card effects while you control a Centaurian monster card. Secondly, during the main phase, if this card was activated this turn, you can send one card from your hand to the graveyard as cost, place a Centaurian monster from your deck face up in your spell and trap zone as a continuous trap. If a monster is special summoned, you can immediately, after this effect resolves, synchro summon using monsters you control, including a Centaurian monster.
Yeah, so this seems like a very, very strong card. It's a permanent E-Telly every single turn, which is always nice.
Well, this card does say that if this card was activated this turn, you can send one, which I misread the first time I read this card as well, but yeah.
Sure, so it's an E-Telly every turn you activate it. Again, it doesn't have any restriction on which one you can summon, which seems very good. It's going to be able to get you into ones that you're going to be playing less of in your main deck anyway if you need to. The third effect, if a monster is special summoned, synchro summon, it doesn't care who special summons. So you can quick synchro on your opponent's turn. Going into the draw one pops really nice in your opponent's turn probably, but it doesn't force you to synchro summon a Centurion monster. So I imagine there's probably some really cool plays you can do going into other synchros as well with that.
Oh, 100%, yeah. The standard line that most people have been looking at recently is going into the Crimson Dragon with this at your opponent's turn and just targeting the archetypal synchro since 12 to summon calamities. Which is a bit of an issue. Whether that card will be legal when these cards come out is unlikely, but that is what the deck is trying to do at the minute, since this doesn't lock you into Centaurian monsters, just using one as material, which of course you're going to have access to, because these guys, specifically because Legacia is going to put one of these guys into the spell and trap zone in your end phase, which you can special summon just to trigger this, or whenever you want to in your opponent's turn,
yeah,
basically.
It doesn't have a during the main phase restriction on it, it's just if a monster is special summoned as well. So you can just do it in the draw phase.
Yeah, literally. It's quite insane, I think. And right now, we can only really synchro 8s and 12s. With the levels we have, but if we get like some 3s in there, we can start making some 7s and 10s. Could propel this deck even further, even after Calamity gets banned. We'll go into the second spell. This is Faith of Centurion. It's a quick play spell. You can only use the first and second effect of this card's name each once per turn. Place one Centurion monster from your hand or graveyard face up in your spell and trap zone as a continuous trap. And the second effect is if a Centurion Synchro monster is special summoned to your field while this card is in your graveyard, you can banish this card, then target one Centurion monster in your graveyard, place it face up in your spell and trap zone as a continuous trap. So thoughts on this?
Sure, so the first effect doesn't seem like it's actually going to do too much. Most of them can put themselves on the board anyway. It is a quick play, so you can do it in your opponent's turn as well. The second effect here seems to be what's going to be the good effect, I think. Being able to just banish it and summon one. Banish it and place another one in your spell and trap zone. Seems like it's going to be very good, keeping extra resources as well. Which is always nice in sort of archetype decks, just being able to keep the grind game going.
Yeah, no, I think this first effect is better than it looks, because this card is essentially just Monster Reborn at quick play speed, because obviously they could all summon themselves from the continuous trap zone anyway, which means you can use this to play through hand traps, is essentially what this card's going to be for. But this second effect, where the banishing it to target Centurion monster in your graveyard and put it in as a continuous trap, again, is just Monster Reborn. So you're going to be able to, if you use this on your first turn, you're able to do it on your opponent's turn as well if you're quick synchroing in their turn, which I think is quite insane. And just these monsters are just never going to go anywhere because they're just constantly coming back. We'll go on to the trap now, or one of the traps. We have Centurion Phalanx. It's a normal trap card, and you can only use one of the two effects of this card's name once per turn. You can target one face-up monster on the field and banish it, and if you do, special summon it to its owner's field during the standby phase of the next turn. And the second effect is you can banish this card from your graveyard, then target one Centurion Synchro monster in your graveyard, special summon it, and if you do, it loses 1500 attack. What do you think of this one?
Sure, it's just removal if you need it, as well as extension in your turn 3, helping you to push through for game sort of turn 3 as well. Seems okay at best. It's not absurdly good effect, I don't think.
Well, what I like about this trap, and why I don't like a lot of archetypal traps, is they have so many conditions on them and when you can activate them. Like, oh, you have to control a punk monster, or you have to control, like, Hydrant to get, like, the actual good effect and that sort of stuff. You don't have any condition to activating this trap. This is just a trap you can set and play at any time, which I quite like. It's obviously just a temporary banish, which isn't the greatest thing in the world, but it is just a one-for-one removal, and I think it's quite strong. The interesting thing about this second effect, where it says you can banish it to special summon back a Centurion Synchro monster, it says it loses 1500 attack, which actually puts the Synchro monster at 2000 attack, which means it reaches the condition for its second effect of not being able to be destroyed by battle, which is kind of cool and probably going to help you live in turns when your opponent doesn't realise you can just bring this back in the battle phase and he's just going to stay there after getting a draw and a pop, since the Synchro triggers on special summon, not Synchro summon.
Yeah, that's pretty fun, that is.
Yeah, I find that these spells and traps look not amazing at first glance, but like there's going to be so many situations where they are going to come up, which I think is really, really cool. We'll go on to the last trap here, and the last card of the archetype so far. We are expecting more, but this is what we've got so far. And this is Truth Centurion. It is a counter trap card, and it says when a spell trap with monster effect is activated, you can send one face-up monster card from your spell and trap zone to the graveyard and negate the activation, and if you do, destroy that card. Thoughts?
Sure, it's just a generic sort of archetype counter trap, really, isn't it? We get them basically with the majority of decks we get now, where it just negates something at spell speed 3. Sending one face-up monster card from your spell and trap zone to the graveyard. Sure, you don't actually care because chances are you're just going to put it back there and summon it again in the same turn.
Yeah, pretty much. That's pretty much exactly what this card does. A thing to note is obviously what you mentioned at the first card we talked about, Primera. It adds Centurion cards, which means when you have your combo pieces, you are able to search the True Centurion to ensure that your opponent can't interact with you summoning Crimson Dragon and targeting Legacia, which is really quite cool. Because I don't know if you've seen the Centurion video on our channel, but access to Primera or Trudea or the field spell, all on their own, with one discard, is the Legacia Crimson Dragon combo. So if you're opening up with 2 of these, you get to search the counter trap and you get to just play with no worries whatsoever.
Yeah, sure. Just skip your turn, and I've got counter trap protection as well. You can't really ask for a lot better than that.
Yeah, no, it's just an instant win, and that's why Calamity Dragon has to go.
Oh,
But that is everything from Centurion. Do you want to give like a final ranking of this archetype of how you feel like it's going right now?
Yeah, so it seems like it's very good. It's got some cool cards in the deck. As it's a new archetype, probably going to get more support, I'd imagine. And it's a synchro deck, which is really good. Like, not having hard restrictions on a lot of the cards. If Calamity does go, the scope of what you can still do with the deck, I presume, is going to be extremely wide. I don't think it's currently like tier 1 meta contender, but who knows? You might get someone who enjoys the gimmick of the archetype and specifically sticks to playing something like that, and just does really make it good.
Yeah, I think that's a very good chance of that. I think something that this deck really has going for it is how strong the field spell is. Especially now we have access to Revolution Synchron and Ancient Fairy Dragon. There's definitely going to be a plethora of archetypes which you could possibly use this as an engine. I've been tinkering around with Invoked recently, and have you seen that Invoked generator list that like won like a regional in the United States?
Yeah, I see it very, very briefly, yeah.
Yeah, so they like to use Magical Meltdown and Revolution Synchron to go through the entire generator line. You could essentially do the exact same thing in this list, being able to go from Magical Meltdown and Revolution Synchron into basically the full board of this, but plus Crystal Wing and Mechaba, which looks quite interesting. So it'll be interesting to see what direction people take this archetype, because I think there's plenty of different ways they can go.
Yeah, for sure, yeah.
But, yeah, we'll go into our second topic of today, and that is Yubel. Yubel obviously being the big bad of the last series of GX, which I never watched. But she's got a bunch of support. I think it's like 7 cards. Yeah, 7 cards we have to talk about. So we are going to start at the top with the Spirit of Yubel. This is a level 10 Dark Fiend effect monster with 0 attack and 0 defense. You can only use the first and second effect of this card's name each once per turn. When an opponent's monster declares an attack, you can special summon this card from your hand. If this card is special summoned, you can take 1 spell trap from the deck that mentions Yubel and either add it to your hand or set it. Cannot be destroyed by battle, also you take no battle damage from battles involving this card. And fourthly, if this card is destroyed, you can special summon one of your Yubel that is banished or in your hand, deck or graveyard. So first thoughts on this card?
Yeah, seems really cool. Again, it's another gimmicky one where it's when your opponent declares an attack, special summon it. It searches on summon or sets on summon, which is really cool. Has battle protection and damage protection again, and if it's destroyed, it replaces itself by summoning another one. It's very, very good.
Yeah, that's fair. I don't like the fact that it doesn't drop itself, but well, I mean, it drops itself, but like only when your opponent declares an attack. I feel like this maybe could potentially brick in hand, which might be a little bit of an issue, but I mean, the search effect's strong. Your opponent's not getting rid of it without having to pay some form of penalty. I think it's quite okay. The second card is Geist Grinder Golem, which is a retrain of Grinder Golem. It is a level 8 Dark Fiend effect monster with 3000 attack and 300 defense. You can only special summon Grinder Golem once per turn. Imagine if they put this clause on the first one. The first effect is you can reveal 1 Yubel monster in your hand, special summon this card from your hand to your opponent's field, then you can special summon the revealed monster to your field. Second effect, once per turn during damage calculation, if this card battles a Yubel monster, your opponent gains 3000 life points, which of course would be you, since you are summoning to your opponent's field. And the third effect is if you special summon Yubel while this card is in your graveyard, you can special summon this card to your opponent's field. So what do you think of this?
Yeah, this one's another funny gimmicky card. It summons to your opponent's field and summons one to yours, which is really good. You want it on your opponent's field as much as possible because you're going to be gaining life points from attacking into it. The big one doesn't let you take battle damage, so you're just going to attack into this, gain 3000 life points, out this, re-summon it back onto your opponent's field, and just keep doing that.
Yeah, I think that's likely. I don't know if this card will actually be played in the deck, if it's going to be competitive in like any capacity, because it just seems so weird. Like, I don't think gaining 3,000 life points is good enough.
Yeah,
really.
They both seem very gimmicky so far, so I don't imagine this is actually going to be a viable deck. The other one, the one that drops itself as a battle fader sort of thing, again, it's very situational. It's not actually going to be amazing. A lot of the time, your opponent's going to have Omni Negates for stuff like that, so the viability of these as cards probably isn't actually that much.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. This next card, however, I know is really quite strong. So this is Samsara Regenerating Lotus, which is obviously a retrain of the old Samsara Lotus, which was relevant for a bunch of FTKs. This is a level 1 Dark Fiend effect monster with 0 attack and 0 defense. So you're going to use the first, second, and third effect of this card's name each once per turn. The first effect is you contribute this card, special summon a Yubel monster from your deck. Second, during your opponent's turn, when a monster effect is activated while you control a Yubel monster, quick effect, you contribute this card. That effect becomes destroy one Yubel monster on the field. The third effect is during your end phase, if you control Yubel and this card is in your graveyard, you can take this card and either add it to your hand or special summon it. So thoughts on this?
Sure, so it's the normal summon of the deck that gets you into everything. It's basically the lone fire of the deck. Seems like you're going to be gaining an advantage from them destroying some of the Yubels. Possibly some of these cards we're going to read soon are going to generate you more advantage when they're destroyed. It replaces itself as well, which is very good. You just sort of summoning it, tributing it off, summoning it back in the end phase after you've done whatever you're doing with your Yubel cards. Yeah, it seems very good. Maybe some of these other cards are going to justify why it's going to be so broken when we get to them.
Yeah, so the fact that it's a starter and it's also an interruption on your opponent's turn, which is always going to be there, because we assume you're always going to control a Yubel card in in this deck since it is Yubel. I like that it special summons this one, because this obviously is good access to your spells and trap cards, and if this is destroyed, you get to special summon another Yubel from the deck, and it doesn't specify you can't summon another copy of herself, which is kind of cool. So this could be a quite interesting resource loop of, oh, I'm going to use this, I'm going to summon this, I'm going to grab a spell, and then this is going to pop this, it's going to summon this, and then grab another spell. That is something of note, I think. This next monster is a fusion monster, and my German's not very good. It's Yubel das Erglieb maybe. It's a level 12 Dark Fiend effect monster with 0 attack and 0 defense, and the materials in this card is 1 Yubel monster plus 1+ effect monsters on the field. You can only use the first effect of this card's name once per turn. If this card is fusion summoned, you can inflict 500 damage to your opponent for each fusion material used for its summon. The second effect is it cannot be destroyed by battle or card effects. Also, you take no battle damage from battles involving this card. And the third effect is if this card battles an opponent's monster, at the end of the damage step, inflict damage to them equal to that monster's attack, and if you do, banish it. So what do you think about this?
Yeah, it has a burn effect, which is always going to be relevant. Protection effect again, very good. And it's also burning your opponent when they attack into you. It's sort of here. I don't know how good this is going to be. Again, it seems very gimmicky. It has some cool protection effects, which is really nice, like taking no battle damage from it. You summon the golem to your opponent's field and summon this to your field. You're then gaining 3,000, and they're losing 3,000 when they're battling into each other every turn, which is very cool.
Yeah, I think that's definitely something to note. This is just such a ridiculous super poly target, both for the deck and for against the deck.
Yeah, it's
like
needing
one Yubel and any effect monsters.
Yeah, needing an archetype card and any amount of monsters. It's going to make super poly in the deck very, very good. Getting access to Yubel and setting super poly, and you can just clear your opponent's board when they can't respond to it at any point in time. Very, very strong.
Yeah, I think this card's quite interesting. Speaking, I'm going to skip the card because we're talking about Super Poly, so we'll talk about Mature Chronicle. This is a continuous spell card, and you're going to use the second effect of this card's name once per turn. Each time a Yubel monster and or monsters that mention Yubel is special summoned, place 1 Chronicle counter on this card. Second effect, you can remove up to 5 Chronicle counters from cards you control to activate one of these effects. 1 counter, special summon 1 Yubel from your graveyard. 2, add 1 of your banished cards to your hand. 3, banish 1 card from your deck. 4, destroy 1 card on the field. 5, add super polymerization from your deck to your hand. So, first thoughts here.
It seems to be very, very good. Yeah. It has a lot of effects, which is what you love to see on cards like this. It offers so much for what the actual deck can do. And you can also do some funny lines with stuff like Thunders, which, not ironically, is something I have looked into. Being able to search Super Poly. I don't know how easy you're going to get to 5 counters on your first turn with this, but if it becomes very easy to get to 5 counters, being able to search Super Poly when it's going to be such a high impact card specifically for this deck because of the Super Poly target in it is going to be very, very cool. It has the Monster Reborn effect as well, which is very, very nice.
Yeah, I don't know how easy it's going to be to get 5 counters on this card. Like, it's probably going to be quite easy to get 2, because the Lotus is going to summon 1, and the Lotus is going to summon itself back, which is going to be 2 for this card. I'm not sure where the other 3 are going to come from, realistically, so far, anyway. Maybe the Fusion. Yeah, no, it looks like a really strong card. Like, this add Super Poly to your hand is ridiculous. Non-targeting pop, banish any card from your deck, add one of your banished cards to your hand. This means you can add a face-down banished card as well, which means if you were playing Pot of Desires in the deck, activate Pot of Desires, banish 10. Oh, I banished Super Poly. I'll just remove 2, and I'll just search Super Poly that way. So, yeah, this card's really, really cool. We'll go a step back to Nightmare Pain. This is the other continuous spell card. You can only use the first effect of this card's name once per turn. During your main phase, you can destroy 1 dark monster in your hand or face-up field, and if you do, add 1 Yubel or 1 card that mentions it from your deck to your hand, except for another copy of itself. And while you control any Yubel monsters, all opponent's monsters must attack them if able. And the third effect is your opponent takes any battle damage you would have taken from battles involving your Yubel monsters instead. So, what do you think of this?
Sure, so we'll start with the third effect. Again, it's a very gimmicky, it's seeming like Time Lord things, where you want to just be attacking into your opponent, you're not taking the damage, but they are. This, with the Fusion, is going to double the damage they're taking from it. The forcing your opponent to attack is very, very cool as well, because, as I said, you're not taking any damage from it, but they are. And during the main phase, destroy 1 dark, and Rota from your deck is sure. Do you know what I mean? Every single deck loves to be able to Rota from their deck when they want to.
Yeah, thing to note is this card destroys as well. This will trigger both the new Yubel to special summon a Yubel from your hand, deck, banished, or graveyard, but it also triggers the old Yubels as well to be able to special summon from the deck or graveyard or wherever they summon from, as well as getting this search, which makes this card quite insane as well, I think.
Yeah, definitely, yeah.
We'll go on to the trap card. This is Eternal Favourite. It's a continuous trap card, and it says once per turn you can activate one of these effects, but you can only use each of the following effects of this card's name once per turn, which is a very odd way of phrasing this. Essentially, it means you can use both effects if you have 2 copies of the trap on the field. If you only have 1 copy, you can use the first or the second effect, which is odd. But the first one is special summon 1 of your Yubel monsters that's banished or in your graveyard. Neither player can activate cards or effects when it is special summoned. And the second effect is if you control Yubel, discard 1 card and send this face-up card from the spell and trap zone to the graveyard. Fusion summon 1 fusion monster from your extra deck using monsters from either field as material, including a Yubel monster. So what are your thoughts on this?
So it's another copy of Super Poly, except your opponent can respond to this one. That's fine, it's going to act as a really good interruption, especially because you can search it off the first monster we read. The special summon 1 with the sort of like meltdown protection on summon is nice as well. You can summon the big again summon back the big one and guarantee you're going to get the search effect off of it, which is really nice. It does specify it has to be one of the Yubel monsters, so you can't summon back the Lotus, which is a bit of a shame.
Yeah, this card seems really good. I think it's probably just going to be that one-off trap that you play for when you've already opened all of your search targets. But I think it's strong enough at being that. The fact that it's going to be a Super Poly every single turn, because this is a continuous trap, but also it's just a reborn. I don't know. It seems good enough. I think these 2 spells definitely outclass it in terms of usefulness, but I think it still has a point of being in the deck. Do you want to give like a final sort of review of the archetype so far? I say so far, I mean Ubel's been coming out for years at this point, but how you feel about the new support?
Yeah, it's very gimmicky. It's very fun. Super poly deck. It is what it is. Do you know what I mean? It's not going to be another great deck, I don't think, but it is going to be something that's going to be fun to take to locals. You'll be able to have a good time. You'll probably win a couple of games with it.
Yeah, I think that's exactly where this deck's going to be, and I'm definitely going to give it a go because it just seems really, really funny. But in the past, Ubel has come with another specific archetype, and that archetype is Fire King. We actually have some Fire King cards to talk about as well. So we've got 3 cards that have been announced for the new structure deck, which comes out in November, I want to say. I could be wrong. So we've got 3 cards, 1 monster, 1 spell, 1 trap, and then we've got some listings for some reprints, which we won't go into. The first card is Fire King Avatar Hanuman, which is a level 4 Fire Beast Warrior effect, 1600 attack and 200 defense. If a face-up Fire King monster you control is destroyed by card effect, you can special summon this card from your hands. And the second effect is when a spell, trap card, or effect is activated, you can negate the activation. If you do, destroy 1 other fire monster in your hand or face-up field. So, simple card text. What do you think, Dev?
So I'm not actually familiar with the Fire King archetype as it is currently. Presumably it's sort of like trying to destroy themselves to summon more from the looks of this. Having a monster that drops itself, which is also a negation, is very cool, especially if, as I say, they do generate advantage from destruction of themselves. Yeah, this one seems really good.
Yeah, so the Fire Kings are an archetype which do plus off being destroyed. They have their own Dragonic Diagram in Fire King Island, which essentially does the same thing as Diagram, except it's special summons from the deck, I want to say. Maybe. All the monsters have some form of effect that activate when they're popped, or if another one is popped. So that is essentially what the deck does. They already have this exact monster, but for monster effects in the archetype, and this is like just the spell trap version of that one. But he does seem quite cool. I do kind of like him. I don't know, the fact that he just drops himself from hand, I would like if he dropped from hand or graveyard, I think, but maybe this is good enough. I don't know. The second card is Flame King God Heavenly Immolation, or the Fire King Sacred Immolation. I guess it would be the Fire King Sacred Immolation, since it says Fire King in the name. It's a quick play spell. You can only use 1 of the first and second effect of this card's name once per turn, and only once per that turn. First effect is target any same number of Fire King monsters you control, and cards your opponent controls, destroy them. And the second effect is if a Fire King card you control would be destroyed by card effect, you can banish this card from your graveyard instead. So, thoughts on this?
Yeah, the protection effect is nice. Do you know what I mean? Every deck likes to have some sort of destruction protection. The first effect is very interesting, I think. It's a quick play, so you can, if you have a monster on board, you can activate this, target the monster as well as targeting this. If it is a no, apologies, sorry, it says Fire King monsters you control. But yeah, so you can pop monsters on your side of the field and on your opponent's the same number. How good it's going to be actually, because it's just monsters, I don't know. But if they're all replacing themselves anyway, it's going to be probably good.
Yeah, I think with the first translation of this card, it said target Fire King monsters you control and destroy cards your opponent controls equals that level. Of number, sorry. But from this text, it seems like you're also going to be targeting your opponent's cards, which I think makes this card a lot worse than the original translation suggested. But it is still a card which is going to be able to pop, like, say, 2 of your monsters and 2 of your opponent's monsters, and you're going to plus off yours being destroyed because they all have, like, trigger effects when they're destroyed, or other cards are going to trigger off of cards being destroyed. They'll be able to drop one of these guys if you pop, like, something. I don't know. It seems okay. I don't think it's amazing, though. This next card, however, is really, really quite strong, I think. It's a trap card. You only use the first and second effect of this card's name once per turn. The first effect is special summon 1 Fire Beast monster, 1 Fire Beast Warrior monster, and 1 Fire Winged Beast monster. 1 each from your hand, deck, and graveyards, but their effects are negated, also destroy them during the end phase. The second effect is you can banish this card from your graveyard. This turn, your opponent cannot activate cards or effects when your Fire King monster is normal or special summoned. So what's your thoughts on this?
It special summons 3 monsters. they don't have to specifically be Fire Kings. It's probably going to be absurdly good for some reason. Any card that's going to special summon 3 is probably going to be good. If you're specifically doing Fire Kings, you're going to get the triggers when they're destroyed again, which is very good. The second effect is fine. It's very sort of niche effect in my opinion. I don't imagine there's going to be a lot of time where the second effect is relevant, but it's nice just to have that effect there.
Yeah, so something to note with this first effect is you can special summon a Fire Beast monster, well that's Tri-Brigade Kit, a Fire Beast Warrior, well that's Fractal, and a Wing Beast monster. Okay, we're just playing a Wing Beast, we can just play this and try, and just get a bunch of guys out, which is quite cool. So maybe Tri-Brigade Fire King is something that's possible to play, especially if this card is searchable. I'm not entirely sure how well the spell traps are searched in Fire King. I haven't played it in years, but if they are searchable, this could definitely be something you set alongside a Revolt to help you win the game. This second effect, this is just kind of like Miscellaneousaurus, which, well, it's good in Dino, so I imagine it's probably quite good in Fire King, if any of the Fire King cards are actually worth negating, that is. And yeah, I think that's kind of okay. So what's your final thoughts on like this Fire King support?
Yeah, it seems nice. They've got a spell trap negate, which is cool. The removal as well. The trap is a really interesting card, as you already said. I've said as well. Summoning non-archetype cards. The potential for this is going to probably be very high out of the deck as well as in the deck.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. And of course, this is all coming from the next structure deck, the Fire King Reloaded structure deck. And I think we can expect to see even more Fire King support going forward. I don't think they're done with this archetype quite yet. That is all of the new cards I wanted to talk about this week. But we do have some regional results. There was the Richmond WCQ Regional in the States this weekend. And in front of us, we can see the top 8. So the top 8 was Salamangreat, Labyrinth, Vagrisol, Fluundereeze, Pearly, Rescue Ace, and Kashtira in that order. What do you think of this sort of like breakdown for a regional event?
Yeah, it seems diverse. The meta currently is any deck can really do well, depending on how it's built. It's surprising seeing Salamangreat winning it. I think Salamangreat struggles to play into certain ones of these decks, so I'm not completely sure how they've done it well. But presumably the guy who's played it is very experienced in Salamangreats. I don't think it's got a crazy high ceiling as far as meta play actually goes, but the element of Salamangreat was good 2 to 3 years ago. The likelihood of people knowing what to do and when with it is probably what massively helped out with a deck like this in such a diverse format. It's a small engine card. You play very few engine cards in it, so you have a lot of space for flex cards as well, which will massively help out. Yeah.
Well, we can look exactly at the Salamangreat list because it has been uploaded to ygopro.dec, whatever the fuck MBT says. And this is the list. I'll quickly read through it for those of you who are listening audio only. We have the 1 Gazelle, as it's still at 1 in the TCG, 2 copies of Salamangreat of Fire, 1 Salamangreat Weasel, 3 copies of Foxy, 3 Spinny, 2 Jack Jaguar, 1 Falco, 2 Flame Buffalo, 3 Ash Blossom and Joy Springs, 3 Nibiru the Primal Being, 2 Pot of Desires, 3 Circle, 3 Silent Mining, 1 Call by the Grave, 1 Sanctuary, 1 Will, 1 Rage, 1 Roar, 3 Book of Moon, and 3 Infinite Impermanence in the main deck. The extra deck consists of 2 copies of the Blazing Phoenix, 3 copies of Balinx, 3 copies of Sunlight Wolf, 1 Link Decoder, 1 Splash Mage, 1 Update Jammer, 1 Transcode Talker, 1 Decode Talker Heat Soul, 1 Access Code Talker, and 1 Salamangreat Mirage Stalio, and we'll get to the side deck later if it's relevant. So looking at this list, what are your first impressions of the list in front of you?
Yeah, it seems very much how Salamangreat was played before. If you're going first, you are trying to set up the trap as well as an amount of hand traps and you're killing them turn 3. If you're going second, you are trying to stop them with your hand traps and kill them turn 2. It's a Cyburst deck, so it's very much just access code with update jammer transcode just to go for the kill all the time. Yeah, as I said, there is, 12 hand trap spots or go second spots here, which is optimal. It's a very good amount, I think.
We've got 12 traditional non-engine slots here with the Imperms books. Ashes and Nibs. How well do you know these new cards, the Weasel and the Of Fire?
I do not at all, actually.
Okay, so Salamangreat of Fire is a level 2 Cyburst. On normal or special summon, it adds a Salamangreat monster from deck to hand, but it locks you into only using fires for the remainder of the turn, like special summoning them. And Weasel is a free special summon if you have 2 Salamangrates in your graveyard, and has a graveyard effect that when a Salamangreat monster is link summoned, using itself as material, I think, you can special summon this to your opponent's field, and you special summon a Salamangreat monster from your graveyard to your opponent's field, put this back into the deck and draw a card. These are the only new cards that are in the list.
Sure, yeah, so the fire is good when you go first. Your line is generally going to be for the Sunlight Wolf or Heat Soul anyway, so you don't actually care about the restriction. Being able to search is all you need for that one. And the other one is just an extender, as I said. If you're playing turn 2, you are just summoning as many bodies as you can for free, just to go for the access line a lot of the time in decks like this.
Oh yeah, no, 100%. This new Link monster is actually really cool as well. Essentially, if it's Link summoned using itself, so using Sanctuary, you get to search for any Salamangreat card.
Yeah.
So this accesses your Roar and your Rage without having to dump them on Gazelle.
Yeah, that's very nice, yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's essentially what this list tried to do. And yeah, very cheap deck, it looks like. There was a price thing here somewhere.
I think this was about $280, I think I remember reading.
Yeah.
A lot of that
$280
is going to be your non-engine cards as well. A lot of that is. The Salamangrates was all structured decks. You've got the access code, your Kurikaras. That's sort of half your value there, more or less.
Yeah, so if you're looking for a cheap deck, this is definitely something you could 100% play and probably pick up quite cheap. We'll go into the other lists here. We'll go for these ones a little bit quicker because they didn't win, so who cares. Labyrinth, pretty standard Labyrinth build here. Just playing the furniture builds. We're not playing any Floodgates, which I love to see. Eradicate is still on the list. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, it looks like a very, very standard current Labyrinth deck. I'm a massive fan of Karma Cannon. I think that's an absurdly good trap card, especially in decks like this. Yeah, Labyrinth is a really good deck. Expect to see it if you go to events. That's just how it is really now. The deck's the best control deck of the format in my opinion. It will be until Engine gets hit in the deck or heavy hits to consistency cards.
Out of interest, what hit would you use on this deck when we get to the next ban list?
In Engine or non-Engine?
Engine. Oh, both.
Yeah, so non-Engine, I realistically think Prosperity is probably going. I think Eradicator is going as well. The card is very, very strong when you can drop it turn 0, turn 1. Obviously, they get a new support as well coming out, so I don't imagine the next ban list is going to hit them hard, if at all. But it's probably going to be to one of the 2 traps.
Yeah, I would like to see Big Welcome go to 1, I think. Maybe start it at 2, considering we've got new engine coming out, new cards coming out for Labyrinth. But I think Big Welcome has to be hit in some capacity, probably.
Yeah, I'd agree in Big Welcome. It's the one that banishes itself, so it really limits the grind game of a deck like this, which will massively hinder the deck. Welcome just resets itself. Do you know what I mean? If Welcome's at 1 or if it's at 3, it isn't going to make a huge difference because you're almost always going to have access to it after you've accessed the first one anyway.
Yeah, no, that's totally fair. I think Big Welcome is the one they're going to have to eventually hit when they want to lay this deck out to pasture. The extra deck looks pretty standard. I mean, we're playing one of the Phantom Knight Fusion. I'm not entirely sure why. We're not playing Super Poly, so it's not for that. Do you have any idea why we might be playing this card?
I do not. It recycles something, a Beast Fiend or Illusion Monster. Do you play any of them?
Beast Fiend or Illusion? Okay. Oh, is it Beast Fiend? Oh, right. So this just special summons back the entire engine because they're all fiends. Okay, right, with you. Oh, that's really cool. I hadn't actually considered that as something you could play. I wonder if Billy's picked up on that yet. I imagine he probably has.
Yeah, I'd presume so as well.
That's really, really cool. Okay, we'll go on to the next list, and this is a deck that you know really well, and I do not. This is Vanquish Soul, but it's playing a Revolution Synchron package. What are your thoughts here?
Yeah, I think Vanquish Soul as a deck is very, very good. It's a high skill deck to play, but it has massive potential, but just generally because of how it plays. I think Revolution Synchron is an absurdly good card that's come out, giving decks like this access to extra negates in the way of Crystal Wing, as well as board wipes in the way of Black Rose, without needing to summon it, is very good. As I said, I'm a massive fan of Vanquish Soul deck. It's very, very enjoyable to play. I do really, really like it and think it has a lot of potential going forward, especially when the newer cards come out for it in the follow-up sets from this one.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting that I think this is the first time I've seen Revolution Synchron in a list which wasn't exactly Synchron or a deck trying to make AFD. The fact that this one's using Power Tool Dragon to grab Durandal to grab Ryzen is really quite funny. What are your thoughts on like that as an engine?
Yeah, I think it's really nice. I'm not a massive fan of the other search cards in this. A lot of people were playing Prosperity or Small World, which I generally didn't like anyway. Prosperity because it doesn't guarantee you Razen, and Small World because it loses you hand advantage, which is very important in a deck where you need as many attributes in your hand as possible. So being able to search a guaranteed way to Razen, it's really, really nice because it is by far the best card in the deck and turns on everything that the deck can do.
Yeah, that and also being able to get to a Crystal Wing Synchro Dragon as well seems really quite strong. And we're also playing fucking Power Tool Mecha Dragon in this list for, I assume, if you open up Revolution Synchron and Durandal, so you can just get a draw by using Durandal on this guy, which is kind of cool, I guess. We're also playing this new Synchro, which is just a pop on summon, I guess. Yeah, but it looks like a pretty standard list outside of the Revolution Synchrons and the Durandals. I don't really think there's anything here that's missing from other lists. I guess they've just used non-engine slots to put this in. Is there anything you can see that they're missing?
No, it looks very bog standard. I don't think a lot of people are playing the Pluton, which is a weird one. Yeah, normally, as far as I'm aware, you're playing 3 Borg or 2 Caesar, as opposed to Pluton here. I don't think this card's amazing. Maybe it's specifically just because it's a fire, and that is the only reason you're playing it. The main reason I was playing this one is because you just quick effect summon on your opponent's turn going first, and for no reason you could just reveal the Kaiju's or Kurikari you had in hand to make your opponent play around them. No reason other than that.
That's really funny. Oh, I imagine you've made quite a few people at locals cry with that one.
Yeah, the reveal of Darkened Earth, you just reveal 2 Kaiju's. It's very, very amusing.
Here's Humongous, here's Radiant.
Yeah.
They're coming for you next time.
Summon it, give this guy a stat boost for no reason other than the fact that you can show your opponent you have 2 Kaiju's.
Awesome. Well, this looks like a pretty standard list as well. A lot more expensive than the Salamangreat list, but that's what it takes to buy a deck, which was very high rarity coming out of a side set.
And
this next list... Oh yeah, the Revolution Synchrons as well, to be fair. They're mad expensive. This next list is cheap, however, and this is Fluundereeze. I was trying to get the price up. It is $400? How have you spent $400? There must be like Starlights or something in it. This looks like a pretty standard Fluundereeze list, was what I was going to say, but this is expensive apparently.
Yeah, so the actual expense in this is going to be your Prosperities and your Frosts. It's the staples. You're looking at, what is it, probably close to 250, 300 of the value because it's in dollars in your Frosts, your Prosperities. Do you know what I mean? Engine-wise, very, very cheap. It's not an expensive deck to buy at all. The Zeus's are a little bit as well, but they're very generic. You're probably going to have 9 about for another deck.
Yeah, yeah, I like this list. This list looks pretty cool. I like that we're playing 7 pots. We're playing 3 Duality, 3 Prosperity, and 1 Extravagance. I understand when people play like 3 Prosperity and like 1 Extravagance because, 4 pots are better than 3, whatever. When we're already playing 6, it seems quite greedy to play the Extravagance as well. But this deck came 4th, so I guess it must have kind of worked. One note about this deck is I really like the Thrusts in here. Just to get to the 1 Harpy's Featherstorm that we're maining, which is really funny. So if you stop me from playing, we're going to stop you from playing too.
Yeah, it's such a funny card when you resolve Featherstorm. It's very unfair if you have it resolved against you, but if you're the one resolving it, you are having an absolute field day. You're top of the world once you resolve it.
Yeah, I actually lost the game at locals last week after resolving this card, so yeah. feels bad for me.
But you are playing Tri-Brigade FTK as opposed to Flu.
Yeah, that's a fair point. Yeah, my end board was normal summon Nerval, set Featherstorm, pass, because I didn't want to play into hand traps. Yeah, pretty standard list, to be honest. The extra deck doesn't matter, let's be honest, and the side deck is just more generic good stuff. So yeah, this is kind of a good list. We've got 2 more lists to look at. The first one is Pearly, another deck that you know well. Looks pretty standard to me. It's playing 3 of each of the names, and then all of the quick play spells that they can play. Looks pretty standard. What are your thoughts?
So, the new trap is very weird to play. The card itself is terrible in my opinion. I really don't think it's good at all. You are very rarely getting anything worthwhile off of it. I would personally just play a second Jeep over it. The reason this deck is just so good currently in my opinion, it has loads of flex spots for your hand traps, your non-engine cards. Going first or second, if you go first with this deck you can set up a huge towers which your opponent has to out as well as killing you the same turn because you're almost always guaranteed follow up off of it. Going second, the small happiness into Zeus line. If you don't kill with the happiness, you are setting up the biggest Zeus you've ever seen in your life. I think the deck is really, really good. In my opinion, it's probably the best deck of the format, but it feels very, very glass cannon currently to me.
Which is why you like it, of course.
Yeah, it's standard. The more Jack I can put into the deck, the better. 60 card, Pearly Chaos Thunder. Get me on it.
Well, there's certainly space for you to put another engine in this card, because this deck is playing, is it 16 non-engine slots here? We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 non-engine cards, which is quite ridiculous, if I do say so myself.
Yeah, very small engine as far as what you have to play. Half your deck is non-engine. You can tailor it to your locals, which is really nice if you want to play this. You can tailor it to a big event. Any deck like this where you've got a lot of space has a lot of flexibility in what you're playing for.
Yeah, it does look quite insane. I like that we're playing the 3 crossouts. I have to imagine this is for the dimensional barrier, but because I can't see anything else in the main deck we're really that worried about. Maybe Droll and Lockbird.
Yes, specifically dimension barrier. If you look at the extra deck, 14 of the 15 cards are XYZs. If you get debarriered and they call XYZ, you are probably just dead, so you have to play some sort of protection for it.
And that happens to be these 3 crossouts, I guess.
Yes.
Would you play crossout in this deck going forward?
At a bigger event, yes I would, because I'm expecting everyone to be siding dimension barriers, specifically for decks like this. I would have to be playing crossouts if I seriously wanted to take a deck like this to a bigger event, yeah.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair. We've got one more deck to talk about, and that is Rescue Ace. There were 2 of these in the top 8, and this is the list that is on YGO Pro deck. Looks pretty standard. We're playing 3 Airlifter, which is the 1 card starter, 3 copies of Hydrant, which is the good one, 3 copies of Impulse, which is the really, really good one, and then we're just playing 2, 2, 1, 1 of the rest of the stuff. The interesting things to note about this list, while my cat is trying to break into the room, is we are playing Firion King Regulus in this deck. Which I haven't seen for other Rescue Ace lists, but I haven't really been going out my way to search for them. I think this is mainly because we are playing the Puzzle Amino, the Drop and Deleter, to go into either Merrymaker or Sargass, depending on the hand we open up with, which allows us to search this card, which I think is quite cool. What are your thoughts on this list specifically?
Yeah, so there is a 1 or 2 card combo, I can't remember for certain which it is, which gives you a 3 material Appaloosa, your Firion King Regulus, as well as your set 4 back row, which is why they're playing this specific list. This deck feels really, really strong. It has an absurdly good matchup against Pearly because of cards like Impulse, and it feels like all of the monsters just do more than they need to do. They all have sort of like 2 relevant effects, or 3, which is very, very strong in a deck like this when you're backing it up with 3 or 4 back row.
Yeah, I went through Dylan's list with him for a video that'll be coming up on the channel sometime soon once I edit it down. And yeah, the deck sounds really insane. Something to know is this list has decided to play the Reinforce in the side rather than in the main, which Dylan was very vocally against. What are your thoughts on playing this card in the side deck?
Like, I don't hate it. You're playing a lot of names to set off of the set 4 anyway. It's probably personal preference. As I say, yeah, like if you're putting the Regulus in the main deck, it's better than the Reinforce, I'd imagine. A lot of boards, or a lot of hands from other decks aren't going to play through your board anyway, so you don't necessarily always need it. It's probably just one of the ones, it's nice if you have it, but you don't care if you haven't. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I think the Reinforce is regularly used as like a line to play around evenly matched. Like you grab Reinforce, one of the traps, Rescue, and Alert. So if you get evenly, just like, oh, start a battle phase, I like to play all these, still have them in my graveyard sort of thing. I guess if you're playing the Regulus, you don't have to worry about evenly as much because you have the Omni Negate for it. Maybe that's the reason they decided to side the Reinforce. Yeah, other than that, it looks like a pretty standard list, pretty standard extra deck, pretty standard side deck, pretty standard list. We'll go back to the top 8 listings. After seeing all of those decks here and how strong they are, it's even more impressive that Salamangreat managed to win this event, especially if you look at the deck price on the side here, way below everything else, which is really cool. And it's nice to see like old decks getting new support and immediately jumping in to actually winning events. Yeah, but that is everything I want to talk about today, Devon. Thank you for joining me on tonight's episode of the This Week in Yu-Gi-Oh! Podcast. And do you have any final closing thoughts about what we've talked about?
No, not really. It's a lot of cool new archetypes coming out, and yeah, the format itself currently very, very diverse, which I'm enjoying at the minute. I think the ban list is probably going to change that when it comes around. We're going to probably go to a 2 or 3 deck format again, but yeah, diversity in decks, diversity in deck building is always fun. A lot of these decks which are topping aren't built exactly the same. There's a lot of different ways you can build them, a lot of different engines you can play in them and stuff like that. So it's very nice. As a player, I'm really, really enjoying it at the moment. Yeah, thanks for having me anyway.
Well, thanks for coming on, and I'm sure we'll have you back on the podcast at some point, and hopefully we'll see some form of Bestial Thunder pile deck from you on the channel in deck profile form at some point as well, because those decks look quite cool at the minute, especially with Shifter being as prevalent as it is. But that being said, thank you again for being on the podcast, and thank everybody at home for watching, and we'll catch you guys in the next episode of This Week in Yu-Gi-Oh! See you later.